Ladies and gentlemen, digital dollar is here. According to this headline, banking giants are starting a 12-week digital dollar pilot with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. This is bad news because a digital dollar will give your government a lot more control over your money. That's because this digital dollar is a central bank digital currency, also known as a CBDC, and it turns out that CBDCs are programmable, which means your government will have the ability to monitor your transactions and impose arbitrary regulations. And it's not just the United States. According to a study conducted by the Bank for International Settlements, 90% of central banks worldwide are now working on developing their own CBDC. These governments are presenting these central bank digital currencies as a silver bullet that will solve all our financial issues. But the true reason behind this push is far more devious, and the amount of control that the governments will get is truly terrifying. So, let's have a look at what's happening. Let's first start with the central bank digital currencies. So, what is a central bank digital currency? Central bank digital currencies are digital tokens that are directly issued by a central bank. They are usually secured on the country's original currency and therefore have the same value as the physical currency. Unlike cryptocurrencies, CBDCs exist on centralized ledgers monitored and managed by governments. CBDCs can be confused with cryptocurrencies because both exist as a digital form on a blockchain ledger connected to a unique digital ID. But the key difference between a cryptocurrency and a CBDC is that the CBDC is centralized and regulated by a central bank. This gives the government direct control over your finances because you will have a bank account that will be managed and controlled by the central bank. That's why CBDC allows countries to implement their monetary policies with more control. But how will you use this digital dollar? Well, you will be able to access and use your digital money via the official app. The digital dollar is in the pilot phase, so we haven't seen the app yet, but China has already released its digital yuan, and their app looks something like this. So you'll have an app like this, and all your money will be accessible through this app, and everything you do here will be monitored by the central bank because you will have a bank account that will be managed by the central bank. Inflation and market instability is a major issue in today's society. Governments usually have a couple of tools to control the economy. They can either change the interest rates or print more money, but that will change with central bank digital currencies. CBDCs would provide governments and financial institutions with surgically precise instruments to target people and groups, in contrast to what they do today, which is basically clumsy manipulation of the economy through macroeconomic levers. Because CBDCs will have an effect on the money in your digital wallet, the government will have the ability to adjust interest rates as frequently as necessary and with near immediate effects. But the ability of governments and financial institutions to manage economies in a biased manner would be considerably enhanced by a CBDC. CBDCs are programmable, which means governments will be able to do whatever they want with it. They'll be able to trace the flow of money, cancel transactions, impose arbitrary regulations, put expiration dates on your money, and automatically collect tax and other fines. They'll also be able to punish you for breaking a rule, and the idea that governments would use CBDCs in this capacity is not implausible. We have seen governments use CBDCs to suppress minorities, political opponents, and even whole countries, and this isn't even the worst-case scenario for us. Government can abuse this authority even if we aren't going through financial crisis. In fact, the BIS study I mentioned earlier clearly states that CBDCs will help central banks avoid competition from global stablecoins. These financial institutions are very mindful of the potential of decentralized economy. Cryptocurrencies are a game changer for people living in third world countries, and that's because these decentralized blockchains are free from traditional banking systems. People from Afghanistan, Venezuela, and Ukraine have the basic economic freedom to transact because crypto run on decentralized networks. The stuff you are hearing from politicians in favor of CBDCs is pretty much an empty promise. They constantly use the argument that CBDCs are programmable money, but what they conveniently leave out is that CBDCs can only be programmed by the central bank. In other words, in order to develop applications on these networks, developers would need to get approval by the central banks. These financial institutions want to eliminate privacy and anonymity from the economy altogether, and this shouldn't come as a surprise. For centuries, governments have maintained their authority by enforcing their monopoly on fiat currency. It's politically unrealistic to think that central banks will give up their authority, and that's why 90% of central banks worldwide are now working on developing their own digital currency. Now, obviously, we can't finish the video without discussing the potential pros of CBDCs. The most discussed and talked about benefit of a CBDC is anti-money laundering. Governments are always saying cryptocurrencies are enabling money laundering. But the number of transactions associated with illegal activities is an extremely small percentage of overall trade volumes. So it's safe to say that the vast majority of money laundering is carried out through other mediums. Financial institutions also claim that CBDCs will be very effective against theft. This is kind of true because stealing someone's money wouldn't be straightforward. CBDCs give central banks the authority to track and reverse financial transactions, so it would be very hard to get away with stealing someone's money. But a world run on CBDCs would be susceptible to hackers. Every system has flaws, and when there's trillions of dollars in the system, someone somewhere will find a way to exploit those flaws. Another pro is that the government could use digital money to stimulate the economy by injecting money into the system. It would be more effective to airdrop a fiscal stimulus to millions of individuals during a pandemic than to have a government bureaucracy disperse money. These are just the main pros. I am sure there are a few other legitimate pros of CBDCs, but the reality is that the cons far outweigh the pros. Sure, we might be able to get airdrops in our wallets, or we might see a huge drop in illegal activities, but is it worth giving up our privacy? Are you willing to trust these politicians with your money, with your life savings? That's the question that you need to ask yourself.